Parametric scoring.
Hi, I'm Joy Springer, and today we're going to be talking about the parametric scoring process.
Slide. Objectives.
We're going to talk about what the parametric scoring is and how the parametric model works, understanding the 9-point rating scale that we use for the parametric scoring process, and the steps that are required to complete the parametric scoring process. So what is the parametric method? Well, it's a rapid visual assessment that results in a model deferred maintenance number. It's not necessarily accurate at the location level, but it becomes more accurate at the portfolio level. And because of that, we are not going to use these modeled numbers to drive funding or estimate projects. These numbers are purely for our reporting or deferred maintenance costs. So some things that the parametric method does, it's going to provide a snapshot of our portfolio's health. It's going to show us a trend of condition over time and help us determine where we need to develop projects. So once we've completed our parametric scoring process, we'll be able to see those areas that stand out as issues where we might want to develop a project. Some things that it's not going to do, as I mentioned, it's not going to produce a precise deferred maintenance number for individual assets. We aren't going to be generating work orders in order to come up with our deferred maintenance number. We'll write those work orders when we're ready to do the work or write a project. And it's not going to provide us with the detailed information that we need in order to create a project. When we need to get that information in order to scope our project, we'll go back out and gather that information in those specific areas instead of gathering that information for everything.
Roles and responsibilities.
So when parks are completing the parametric scoring process in the parks, it's important to have the correct people involved doing the correct roles. And we've identified some park roles here. But all roles and responsibilities are not within the park. WASO and the regions also have a part in this process. So at the park, the facility manager is going to be the person who is communicating the roles and responsibilities with their staff, setting the priorities for when the assessments need to be done, and providing that final review and approval before the parametric scoring assessments are submitted. The field maintenance personnel are going to be our subject matter experts. They're the ones who know the buildings inside and out, and therefore they're the ones that are going to do the actual scoring. That'll help model our deferred maintenance numbers. Our FMSS staff are going to be our support for all this, coordinating the documents, making sure that the field staff has what they need, making sure that they understand what's included in the location record so that we're scoring the correct thing. And then our superintendents are going to need to understand the parametric method and what their park needs to successfully complete it, and working with the facility manager to provide that final review and approval before the scoring results are submitted. As I mentioned, WASO and region also have a part in this. WASO is going to be the one that's taking in all of the numbers and coordinating the repository for service-wide reporting. WASO will also be the ones that are providing the scoring tools to the field service process and all of the other tools that are needed to complete the scoring process. The regions are the ones that are going to be coordinating this process with the parks. So as you work through this, you want to work with your regional FMSS POC and decide how your region is going about this process. Every region is responsible for their own coordinating efforts.
What's in it for the park?
So what's in it for the park? The biggest thing that comes out of this is an ease condition assessment requirement. As I mentioned, instead of going out and writing a work order and costing it for everything in order to come up with our deferred maintenance number, we're doing this quick, rapid visual assessment that models our deferred maintenance number, and then we are only writing those work orders and costing them when we need them to do the work or for a project.
How the model works.
So how does the parametric scoring model work? The rapid visual assessment of some key systems. So for every asset code, we have a set of systems that we're going to be rating. And when we rate them, based on the rating, a model deferred maintenance cost is calculated, and that's based on a percentage of our current replacement value for that location. So some references that we will talk about throughout this presentation and that you want to pay particular attention to as you go through the scoring process are the user guide, the inspection guide, and the frequently asked questions documents. All of these resources can be found at the link in the notes pod to the left of the screen.
Chart.
So on the screen, we're looking at the parametric model for a building, but there's a similar model for all of the asset codes. We're going to go through the different pieces of this.
Facility groupings and systems.
So parametric model for every asset code is going to have something called a facility grouping. Not everything fits into the same box, and so we're using this facility grouping to put our different assets into an appropriate category. So for buildings, we have complex, standard, and simple. And depending on which category it's in, our percentages of the CRV that are associated with the systems will change. So for instance, the facility grouping on a standard building, the roof is going to account for 8% of the CRV. But on a simple building, it's going to account for 26% of the CRV. I just want to note too that the percentages that are shown here are not necessarily what's used in the calculations on the back end. It's purely to show you how all of this works. Across the top, you'll see the different systems that we're going to rate for a building. So for a building, we will rate structure, exterior, roof, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, conveyance, interior finishes, windows and doors, and grounds. There'll be a different set of systems for each of the asset types. As I mentioned earlier, we have the inspection guide and the user guide, and you'll be able to turn to those documents for an in-depth definition of the facility groupings and the system.
We'll use the parametric model.
So most everything is going to be moving to a parametric model. We have everything listed here that will be using the parametric model to model its deferred maintenance numbers. There are, of course, a couple exceptions that we'll get to on the next slide, and a few things I want to highlight with some of the asset types that are here. So for housing will be scored the same as a building. However, it will be broken out onto a separate tab, and there will be a separate score for the interior to align with the reporting numbers that are needed for IQMIS. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later on. We've also added in some historic cost adjustment factors throughout this process. One area where you'll notice this is with buildings. So when there is a historic building, there will be additional facility groupings to choose from, which will allow you to make sure that you're incorporating the treatment type for that historic structure to help make sure that the costs are accurate for that specific treatment. Again, all of this is detailed further in the inspection and user guides.
Will not use.
So some things that will not be using the parametric model. While we do have a parametric model for roads, parking areas, and things like that, we won't be using it for everything. If a road or similar asset is assessed by federal highways, we will use the deferred maintenance number from federal highways. However, if something is not assessed by federal highways, we will use the parametric model. Dams and levees and concessions both have a very in-depth assessment process, and for both of those, they will be accepting the deferred maintenance number from those assessment processes. For interpretive media, at this time, we have not developed a model for this. We're determining what interpretive media will look like in FMSS going forward, and until we determine that, we haven't developed a model for interpretive media.
Rating scale.
So the rating scale for the parametric scoring process is 0 to 9. 0 being that the system doesn't exist. So if you're going through the systems and your particular asset doesn't have that system, you'll give it a 0. And the portion of the CRV that was associated with that system will get redistributed to the other systems that you do have. On the extreme ends of the scale, we have 1, which is very poor, non-functional, and then we have 9, which is very good, or only normal maintenance is required.
Rating scale, color-coded from red, poor, to orange, average, to green, good.
here we have a visual of the rating scale. There's a more in-depth version of this rating scale in the inspection and user guides that provides a definition for each of the scores. But to just give you an idea of how this works, instead of having to choose from 9 scores, we started with the GAR model. So when you first go out and look at something, you want to determine, is it good, is it fair, or is it in poor condition? And then once you've determined that, you whittled it down to 3 scores, and you can choose the appropriate score from those 3. Again, the definitions are in the inspection and user guide for each of these ratings. But to give you an idea, 9 is minimal normal routine maintenance is required, system functions as intended, down to 1, which is major replacement and or repairs are required to restore function, unsafe to operate.
Parametric condition assessment method and practice.
So once again, I want to point out that the percentages on this screen are just here to show you how the calculations work. They may not be the accurate percentages that are occurring in the calculations on the back side. But this is a calculation for one specific system. We're looking at an admin building whose current replacement value is $10 million. Looking just at the interior finishes for this building, they account for 19% of the current replacement. Multiplying that times the CRV for the full building, we determine that the CRV for just the interior finishes is 1.9 million. Take a look at the interior finishes and determine that the score for them is a 7. And based on the percentage that aligns with that score, multiplying that times the system current replacement value, we determine that the deferred maintenance for interior finishes is $45,000. That is just the deferred maintenance for one system. Similar calculation will occur for each of the systems you're building, and all of those system deferred maintenances will get added together, and you'll get the full parametric deferred maintenance number.
Data cleanup.
The first step of the process is the FMSS data cleanup. Parks will be provided a work order cleanup tool spreadsheet, which will flag some problem work orders the Parks can review. We'll get into that a little bit more in the next few slides. Parks will also want to do a desk audit, reviewing their FMSS location data for accuracy and completeness, ensuring that their operating statuses are correct, and looking at the quantities associated with an FMSS location. Just to note, the operating status is very important to this process because if it is not in an operating status, it will not occur in your, it will not show up in your parametric scoring tool. And then the other thing we want to take a look at is our current replacement values. Want to make sure we review them for accuracy and completeness. All of this is based on a percentage of the CRV, so it's important that our CRVs are accurate. Some problem areas that we know are of particular concern would be trails, maintained landscapes, and heritage assets. So pay particular attention to the CRVs for those.
Dashboard.
This is a view of the dashboard of the work orders that will be flagged in the cleanup tool. I just wanted to highlight some of the reasons why a work order might be flagged. You'll see those in the bottom left-hand corner. So the cleanup tool will flag things such as work orders that haven't been touched since FY13, work orders that have a target start date of after FY23, condition assessment application created work orders that haven't been touched since FY16.
Work order cleanup tool.
So based on the criteria listed here, work orders were flagged and a park will receive a spreadsheet with the work orders that have been flagged. On the left-hand side, you'll see some basic work order information. On the right-hand side, there's an indication of why the work order was flagged, so you'll understand why it's on this list. And then the orange column is where a park can indicate if they would like to change the status of the work order. And then this will be uploaded for parks on the back side of FMSS.
Parametric scoring.
So the next step of the parametric process is doing the actual scoring. Parks have gone about this differently and throughout the piloting process, and every park is going to be a little bit different. But we have found that a lot of parks are able to do some of the scoring without actually going into the field. If you have the correct people in the room and the staff that knows your buildings inside and out, they can score this without stepping foot into the facility. Again, a caveat here is that for housing, you will need to go to the actual housing unit to do your scoring process so that these can be used for the IQ misreporting that's needed for rental income.
Parametric scoring tool.
So here we're looking at the parametric scoring tool. There's multiple tabs in the tool. What you see here is the first tab, which is a dashboard to show your progress as you go through the parametric scoring process at your park. The remainder of the tabs look similar to this. There'll be a tab for each of the asset types. We're looking at trails here. As I mentioned earlier, housing will be broken out from buildings, and so it'll have its own tab as well. Some things I want to point out here is that first column is our facility groupings. Then we have some basic location information. And the far right, you'll see some light gray columns. Those will be where your systems are. And this is where parks will input the 0 to 9 score. And once you have completed the entire scoring, you must put a score in every single column, then your parametric DM will calculate. You'll also see that the deferred maintenance difference will calculate based on the FMSS DM and the parametric DM.
Inspection guide.
Here we have a screenshot of what the inspection guide looks like. It'll be a similar page for all of the asset types. Again, we're looking at buildings here, but there'll be a definition for all the facility groupings, all of the systems for each of the asset types.
Housing.
Going into housing a little bit more in depth, because there are individual units that need specific information in order to satisfy IQ misreporting, things will look a little bit different for you on the housing tab. So there will be a line for the location record, and then there'll be an additional line for all of the units that are in a specific location. So you'll have the overall location and then each individual housing unit. So for instance, this last location here, we have a seasonal quarters that has 7 housing units in it. So you'll have an additional line for each of those housing units. We'll be able to score the interior separately so that we can get that interior and exterior score that's needed for IQ misreporting.
Field scoring.
While we were piloting this, we were out at a park and we had some folks film while they were going through the scoring process in the building. So you'll see them describe what's going on with the particular system that they're rating, talk about how they scored it and why they scored it that way. We'll talk about that a little bit after you've had a chance to watch the video.
I'm Jessica Bundy, and I'm here with the team at the Gateway National Recreation Area to do parametric condition assessments. We're going to get started here on the History House.
Man reads.
Conveyance. This includes all conveyance systems, including elevators, lifts, and escalators, which we have none.
We don't have any in this building.
Yes.
So
No
we're going
conveyance.
to mark that down as a 0.
We got a 0.
We can redistribute that number, that part of the CRV to everything else. Thank you.
Man outside.
All right, so next up on the condition assessment guide is the electrical system, and we have Manny here, the subject matter expert, because he is the park electrician at Sandy Hook, and he's going to talk to us about the condition of the electrical.
So this building is referred back to the 1940s, so a lot of the upgrades needed to be done to the electrical system. To our right, we have actually the upgraded electrical panel in order to meet all NEC codes in order to upgrade the building. So based off of our Parametrics rating scheme right here, there are some little issues that need to be addressed, some minor repairs, but the system is fully functional here and is deemed safe over here. So based off of the Parametric scheme, I'd rate it as a number 7 here, but due to all the upgrades here and for the nice time period of 1940.
Thank you.
2 men outside.
Next up on the parametric condition assessment of the History House, we are going to talk about the exteriors.
The History House was built in 1898, and according to the exterior This includes all exteriors to a facility, including finishes, siding, and the entire structure of the wall, including framing, insulation, cladding, studs, block wall. This does not include the windows, roofs, and doors.
After discussion, we decided that we should come out with a grade of a 6, above average. And looking at the exterior facade of the building, you see minor and some infrequent larger repairs that will require system function as intended. A lot of what we're looking at is the brick in the mortar joint. If you notice, the brick is cracked.
Points to wall.
Like we said, the building was built in 1898. There has been repairs. This is a cosmetic facade. Underneath, we know that there's another brick layer of rough material, but this is more cosmetic, but we know there are issues with it.
How are the mortar joints and things that would lead to contributing to the structural integrity and keeping water out, those sorts of things?
Well, from the park experience, we know from our experience that these mortar joints look sound, but we notice it's a very thin layer of material of the original mortar joints. And at times it does fail, and there are repairs that are needed to be done to it.
So then we came up with the overall rating of a 6 because of
6,
some of these
above
weaknesses.
Average. Yes,
But it's still in pretty good condition.
absolutely.
Okay, Jeremy, tell us how we're going to rate the grounds.
So we're going to rate the grounds as a 0 because it falls under the landscape and not the structure of the building. And that's going to go for the driveways, the curbage, the slate sidewalks, and the road coming up to the building.
The HVAC system is relatively new, and looking at the guide and through our discussion, it really would fall out to an 8. So we're going to go with good. Few minor repairs are needed. Normal routine maintenance is required. 6, system functions as intended.
Jessica inside.
Right now, we're going over the parametrics for the interior, and by definition, we think that it is functioning as intended with few or minor repairs, and general maintenance is needed to maintain it so that there's no impact. We know it's not in perfect condition, but this is a historic building, and we think that it should show some signs that it's been lived in to reflect its age. I think that it's important to relay that to people who are going to be in it to visit and experience part of its history. So it does have some cracks. You're seeing some wear, some peeling of paint, but overall it's been restored, and it's functioning as it's intended as an interpretive building for people to be in. And we wouldn't really want to change that. We wouldn't want to restore its condition to new. So we think that the overall rating is an 8, which is good.
Many inside.
All right, we'll be talking about the plumbing, things that you got to consider in your plumbing portion is the fire protection of the plumbing, also your gas-related pipes, i.e. Actually some of your stoves and stuff over here. Like in this building, we do have a propane heated stove or gas stove, which obviously does work. Also, too, you got to look at your fixtures, seeing about the leak portions, if it actually works, and portions of the drains on here. Based on just what you've seen right here and knowing a little bit of knowledge of this building, the drainage system does work properly. All bathrooms in here work appropriately. Gas is in here. So we would rate this per the parametric scale of an 8. It's in good condition, but it does need minor upkeep, checking, make sure nothing does freeze, because it does get cold in this region a little bit. So we do check on these periodically. So an 8 for this one.
Exterior of house.
Is the roof of the history house and the rating on that.
Yes, we're going to go with a 7 on this roof. This roof is about 7 years old. The black spots that you see are repairs. It's a special water, wind resistant roof that the exterior asphalt tabs adhere at the tips of it, so it holds the shingles down. It's in great condition, and we're going with a 7. 7 reads as significantly above average. Minor repairs are needed. System functions as intended. The black spots, as I said, are repairs that were done to the roof where shingles blew off from the wind.
And then we have some repairs around the vents and the flashing around the vents, and some painting needed on the fascia. So minor cosmetic.
And as a reminder, because you're not standing here, We have Sandy Hook Bay right across the street, and we have the Atlantic Ocean that is less than a half mile away to our east. So we're in a sea condition, sea salt condition, which is a factor to building roofs.
Man in basement.
Yes, I'm going to read the textbook definition of structures. Consists of all foundation elements, slabs, footings, basement walls, etc. Decking, floor, construction beams, joists, and all interior load-bearing walls, not interior portions of the walls. And the reason that we're taking the video down here, this is a real prime example of what the structure looks like. This, as we said, it's from 1890. This is the original exterior wall, and these are the interior walls, which under the mortar joints, which we talked about, this is what is below the mortar joints. There's a secondary red brick wall under the cosmetic. Even though we're talking about structures, this is the structural wall that's below the exterior fabric.
Points to brick walls.
And then we've also got really good examples of rafters and floor joists as we're evaluating this.
And not only that, we have one of the main load-bearing walls that is coming through the building, and actually the columns that are actually supporting each of them. And again, looking all the way down to the bottom, for your bowing, your seepage, your decaying of your footers here.
So how are we going to rate the structure for this building, since we walked around the basement and we walked around the exterior looking at the foundation?
Well, that's up for debate, but I believe that we are at a 7. Although the building is from the 1890s.
What would classify it as a 7 for the current condition?
That
So we're functioning really well.
Minor repairs are needed, system functions as intended. We just evaluated the windows and doors on the exterior, and we came up with a number. After some lengthy discussion, we came up with a number of 5 average. Minor and larger repairs are required. System is sporadically unable to function as intended. There are some windows that are really in poor condition, other windows that are in pretty good condition. And it averaged out to about a 5. Our front door is in great condition, our rear door is marginal. So that's really what it comes down to. It's accumulation of all the windows and all the doors.
Video ends.
So just a few things that I want to point out after you've seen the video. For the building, you saw them talk about grounds and that it was a 0. You may be confused as to why we're talking about grounds when we're looking at a building. So while we do have a parametric model built specifically for maintained landscapes, there are some instances where a park does not have a location for their maintained landscape, and they may have a small portion of grounds associated to a building. So for those instances, we've included a grounds system with the buildings to account for that, any of those buildings that may have grounds associated with that. So for most of your buildings, you will probably be rating ground as a 0. The other thing I want to point out is when we're looking at the plumbing, we tested the stove. I just want to let you know that the stove would not be considered part of the scoring process. He was just testing to show that the gas was working.
Step 3.
So the final step of the parametric scoring process is the data submission. Parks should work, again, with their regional FMSS POCs and talk to them about the protocol for their specific region. In the link provided on the left, you guys will have viewing rights for the files that are located here. You want to pay attention to the parametric guidance folder where all those resources are located, but the work order cleanup tool and the parametric scoring tools will all be located at this SharePoint as well. However, only the regions will have the ability to upload final spreadsheets to this SharePoint. Parks will have view rights only.
References.
Again, as I mentioned, you have the SharePoint and the notes pod on the left. I want to share too that you will need a government computer or at least a PIV reader in order to access the SharePoint. You do not need to be on VPN in order to access it. If you have any questions throughout your scoring process, you can direct questions to the FMP help desk, and those will get distributed to the appropriate parties to answer.
Conclusion.
So today we talked about parametric scoring, what it is and how the parametric model works. We talked about the 9-point rating scale, and we talked about the steps required to complete the parametric scoring process. Thank you for joining us.